Welcome everyone to Space City X-Files, your ultimate podcast for delving deep into the cosmos' most perplexing mysteries and unexplained phenomena. I'm your host Rick, as you know, and in today's episode, we'll be investigating a captivating event that occurred in 1908 in a remote Siberian forest. This enigmatic incident, characterized by a massive explosion, flattened trees over an 800 square mile area, and has left scientists, researchers, and enthusiasts mystified for over a century. Brace yourselves as we unveil the theories, examine the eyewitness accounts, and analyze the scientific investigations surrounding this mind-boggling occurrence to piece together the puzzle. So strap in, adjust your space helmets, and let's embark on this exciting journey to unravel the hidden secrets of the universe together. This is episode 19, the Tunguska Incident. I would just like to add really quickly, guys, that episode 20 will be our final episode also. It's been really fun going over these strange stories with you, and we appreciate all the support and encouragement you've given over the past year. Also, before we get started, allow me to say a few words. We thank you dearly for all your support and for listening. If you're new or would like to become a supporter, there are two main ways to do so. First, if you would like to make a monetary contribution, you can go to our website and click on the Support Us with the Tip tab, and there it'll allow you to type in whatever amount you want. 50 cents, $1, $5, whatever amount you want, no pressure. Secondly, and the most effective, you can leave us a review after you listen, wherever you listen. I can't say how important this is because with your feedback, we can improve our show and bring in more listeners, which is priceless. One last thing, we do still have our Patreon membership, which comes with perks, and the show store is still open also, and this does give us support also. So thank you all for your consideration. All proceeds will always go back into the show to improve the quality, and that'll conclude the announcements. All right, let's get started. Let's begin the show. So, the Tunguska Incident of 1908 was isolated to the immediate area of Siberia, Russia. And since this is the first time in history an event like this has ever happened, that's going to allow us to pretty much skip forward straight to the case details. Now, just to add quickly, the location where the event happened was pretty desolate. It was a forest area. The only towns around the area now are Mutaray, Oskova, and Vanabara. And I'm not sure how developed these places were in 1908. So they may have avoided the perfect storm by a few decades. So let's hear how it all went down. On June 30th, 1908, at 7:17 a.m., many people encountered a fireball or some large burning object streaming across the sky. The fireball was reported to be so bright that people had a hard time even looking at it. Many people said it was like trying to look at the sun, and then some people said they thought the sun was even crashing down from the heavens. It was so extreme. A short while after the object appeared, the fireball would change colors, and from what we know now, it was probable that it was nearing Earth's atmosphere and reacting. Now, the fireball appeared bluish-white with an extremely bright tail, emitting a huge plume of smoke from the front that many said resembled a pillar that was growing in size. Now, when I first read these accounts, the way people describe these things, I kept getting pictures in my head like from the Bible. Like the descriptions came off very biblical. And as the fireball passed, eyewitnesses, they reported hearing something that sounded like an artillery barrage raining down fire on the townspeople in quick succession. This was accompanied by earth-shaking tremors that could be felt from hundreds of kilometers away, according to residents of the area. And finally, we have the explosion. So, this history-making explosion is now known to have had the insane power equivalent of about 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. And this makes it 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. What makes this Tunguska incident so mysterious is that although it was one of the strongest blasts ever to happen on Earth, there was no impact crater to be found anywhere. This is what has intrigued countless scientific professionals for generations now, causing people to perform countless experiments and write hundreds of papers, all in the attempt to figure out what the cause of this phenomenon was. Now, because of the blast, understandably, this caused many to believe first that it made some kind of impact. For one, a super powerful shockwave ensued the explosion, knocking people off their feet, damaging buildings hundreds of kilometers away. And we'll hear some first-hand accounts on this soon. But continuing on, the other thing this powerful shockwave would do is produce a significant seismic activity reading in surrounding Europe and Asia, and then sending a strong atmospheric pressure reading to be detected as far as England and the United States. So that's pretty far. When people are finally able to recover and make it out to the site, they are completely blown away by what they found. And this is literally and figuratively. So the first thing they notice is that the powerful blast left no crater, as we said, but something did completely flatten 830 square miles of forest. And it's reported that it destroyed approximately 80 million trees. The last enigma the Tunguska explosion event left behind for people to run wild with is the blast pattern that was left behind that was in the shape of a butterfly. As if this wasn't strange enough, right? And eventually people would begin to get back into their normal routine. But of course, there would have had to have been the uneasy feeling that whatever the hell this thing was could happen again at any moment. I mean, if I had to make an analogy of how the following days felt, I would have to say it was probably something like walking around with a big old barrel of dynamite strapped to your back. I don't know. I don't know how that feels, and I don't want to find out either. So I guess it didn't help that the skies were looking strange as hell for a while after the explosion either. I bet this added to the nerves, It was reported that the night sky glowed extremely bright after the sunset. This was reported as far away as the United States. But in the areas closest to the blast, they said that they didn't even need their lights on in the evening to read their newspaper. No, the neon glow was helping them out for some time after the blast. The sunrises and sunsets were also getting their strange on, with people reporting green and purple colors in the mornings and in the evenings. So there you have it. These are the details of the Tunguska incident that happened June 30th, 1908. All right, so now that we have the events covered, let's go back over some of the first-hand experiences. So on the first account, we have S.B. Simonov, a local farmer in the village of Vanavara, which is about 40 miles to the south of the epicenter of the explosion. And he reports, quote, "At breakfast time, I was sitting by the house facing north. Suddenly, I saw a fire appear high up in the sky in the north. The fire grew larger and larger, and the entire northern side of the sky was lit up. Then the sky split in two, and high above the forest, the fire started to take a bluish tint. At that moment, I felt a great heat, as if my shirt had caught fire. Immediately afterward, there was a loud bang, and I was thrown a few meters. I lost my senses for a moment, but then my wife ran out and led me to the house. After that, such noise came as if rocks were falling or cannons were firing. The earth shook, and when I was on the ground, I pressed my head down, fearing rocks would smash it. When the sky opened up, hot wind raced between the houses, like from cannons, which left traces in the ground like pathways, and it damaged some crops. Later we saw that many windows were shattered, and in the barn, a part of the iron lock snapped." End quote. That's freaking crazy. I mean, I can see it played out in my head. I mean, this is like one of those movies where the world's ending, That had to be a wild scene. All right, on this one here, it's from the Siberia newspaper, that was published the 2nd of July, 1908. So this was some days afterwards. It says, on the morning of the 17th of June, around 9 o'clock a.m., we observed an unusual natural occurrence in the North Karolinsky village, about 230 kilometers north of Karensk. The peasants saw to the northwest, rather high above the horizon, some strangely bright, impossible to look at, bluish-white heavenly body, which for 10 minutes moved downwards. The body appeared as a pipe or a cylinder. The sky was cloudless. Only a small dark cloud was observed in the general direction of the bright body. It was hot and dry that day. As the body neared the ground, the forest, the bright body seemed to smudge, and then turned into a giant billow of black smoke, and a loud knocking, not thunder, was heard as if large stones were falling or artillery was fired. All buildings shook. At the same time, the cloud began emanating flames of uncertain shapes. All villagers were stricken with panic and took to the streets. Women cried, thinking it was the end of the world. The author of these lines was meantime in the forest about 6.4 kilometers north of Karensk, and heard to the northeast some kind of artillery barrage that repeated in intervals of 15 minutes at least 10 times. In Karensk, a few buildings in the walls facing northeast windows glass shook. End quote. Okay, one more. So now we'll hear from a Tunguska Incident tribesman named Chushan. And he states, quote, we had a hut by the river with my brother Chikaran. We were sleeping. Suddenly we both wake up at the same time. Somebody shoved us. We heard whistling and felt a strong wind. Chikaran said, can you hear all those birds flying overhead? We were both in the hut and couldn't see what was going on outside. Suddenly I got shoved again, and this time so hard that I flew into the fire. I got scared. Chikaran got scared too. We started crying out for father, mother, brother, but no one answered. There was noise beyond the hut. We could hear trees falling. Chikaran and I got out of our sleeping bags and wanted to run out, but then the thunder struck. This was the first thunder. The earth began to move and rock. The wind hit our hut and blew us all over. My body was pushed down by sticks, but my head was in the clear. Then I saw a wonder. Trees were falling, the branches were on fire. It became mighty bright. How can I say this? As if there was a second sun. My eyes were hurting. I even closed them. It was like what the Russians call lightning. And immediately there was a loud thunderclap. This was the second thunder. The morning was sunny. There were no clouds. Our sun was shining brightly as usual. And suddenly there came a second one. Chikaran and I had some difficulty getting out from under the remains of our hut. Then we saw that above, but in a different place, there was another flash. A loud thunder came. This was the third thunderstrike. Wind came again, knocked us off our feet, struck the fallen trees. We looked at the fallen trees, watched the treetops get snapped off, watched the fires. Suddenly Chikaran yelled, "Look up!" and pointed with his hand. I looked there and saw another flash, and it made another thunder. But the noise was less than before. This was the fourth strike, like normal thunder. Now, I remembered well, there was also one more thunderstrike, but it was small, and somewhere far away, where the sun goes to sleep. End quote. Another crazy first-hand account. And it got me, though, whenever he said that he was calling out for his family members and they weren't responding. It makes me wonder if they survived the ordeal. I looked into it, but I couldn't find anything else on that one. And according to the event reports, no confirmed deaths ever happened in the town, remarkably. But I doubt that the indigenous tribe of the Evenki were accounted for in those records. It's said that some of the Evenki did die in the blast, but the claims have never been substantiated. I wonder if Chushan's family were the ones they were talking about. I don't know. I hope they made it. Can you imagine, though, if something like this happened in the middle of a major city? I mean, this blast was 1,000 times stronger than the atom bomb. Can you believe that? Check this out. The city of Houston is 665 miles squared. For reference of how big that is, you could fit in the cities of New York, Washington, Boston, San Francisco, Seattle, Minneapolis, and Miami all at once. The blast from the Tunguska Incident leveled an area of 830 square miles. Can you imagine what it would do to a major city? It would wipe us out. It'd wipe us out, killing millions. Christ, that's a scary thought. So, before we get into what the people way smarter than us suspect this phenomenon to have been, let's take a look at the after effects this blast had on the area. See, now I got myself interested after comparing it to present day cities. And I mean, I know the two outcomes would be as far apart as day and night, since Tunguska area was thankfully desolate at the time. But it still had to have had some effect on the area, right? Let's find out. After doing a bit of research, I can see three main areas that were affected immediately. One, of course, would have to have been deforestation. How could it not be? The explosion leveled an estimated 80 million trees. That's insane. It's been decades now, and the area has still not recovered. And of course, because of this, there has been a big change in the ecosystem, causing some animals to vacate the area, like the local reindeer, the birds, and rabbits. All animals that in turn affect the quality of life for the locals and the indigenous tribes that call the place home. Now, in this fact here, the data is still being processed, but I think it's safe to say the intense heat and radiation from the blast also caused mutations in the trees and in the surrounding area. It's theorized that this is causing some to die on their own long after the blast, and others to exhibit unnatural growth patterns. So this could possibly change the way the whole forest looks after it grows back, if it ever does, at least. The second immediate effect I saw was fires from all the dead trees that were knocked down from the blast. I mean, 80 million trees all at once. And it's 1908, and I'm sure the heavy machinery was scarce for them in that area, so the cleanup effort would have likely had to have been done by hand. And there was no way they were going to get all that up before it dried and turned into kindling and firewood. So it's reported that this was the result of many wildfires that eventually spread into local farms, ruining crops that the locals counted on to survive. I mean, can you imagine how absolutely devastating a sight like that would be? The very food that was going to keep you alive for the year burnt away in the twinkling of an eye. And lastly, we kind of touched on this one already, but I'll explain further in detail. The blast left a lot of dead foliage on the ground, and that debris filled in dips and holes that were naturally there before. Some of these crevices were shallow, some were deeper. Well, after a while, the water would collect into those dips and holes that contained the dying plant matter, and that created the perfect concoction for peat bogs to form, transforming much of the forest floor that used to be solid into like a swampy marsh. And this here could be seen as an immediate effect, but also as a long-term effect, because it basically changed the whole makeup of what the forest was. Now, I know it can be easy to say, well, it could have been a whole lot worse. And that's true, but still, it's awe-inspiring to know that this was so powerful that the Tunguska area may have been changed forever because of it. This very reason is why people smarter than us immediately began to try and understand everything there is to know about this incident, because who knows when it's going to happen again. All right, Now, so far, we talked about the events that went down with the Tunguska incident. We've heard from some eyewitness reports, and now we heard the immediate effects of the blast on the Tunguska area. So now let's move on to the theories on what this phenomenon was. And as always, we're going to talk about these claims in two different categories. So first, we'll go over the top conventional explanations as to what this incident was, and then we'll look at the other stranger possibilities, okay? All right, so the first mainstream theory that we have here for what caused this powerful phenomenon is a meteoroid of some sort, and there are a couple of different scenarios, but the most popular is the airburst theory. So it said that a meteor was hurling towards Earth at an incredible speed, and this is what people would have been seeing in the sky. Only its path was not a direct shot to Earth. It was more like coming at an angle, okay? Now, when the meteor began to change colors, this was likely the point where it was nearing Earth's atmosphere. But instead of penetrating Earth's atmosphere and continuing, it kind of like banked off Earth's atmosphere. And this caused it to explode in the air at a distance of approximately 3 to 6 miles above Earth's surface. Now, the meteor was so big and powerful that it still produced a super crazy blast, but because it exploded in the air, this is the reason why there was no impact zones or evidence left behind. The other meteoroid theory is the lake impact hypothesis. So it's basically the same as the one we just mentioned, only in this claim it did penetrate Earth's atmosphere and it made impact into a nearby lake called the Checo Lake, and that's where it's lied concealed all these years. I think they even tried to say on this one that the meteor is what actually caused the lake to exist, but there's no evidence to support that claim. In fact, recent soil samples of the lake floor say that it's been around long before the incident happened. Before we go on to the next hypothesis, I'd like to say something really quickly about the airburst theory. So there have been multiple other times where this airburst deal has happened apparently. It's even pretty common from what I've learned. But it's important to note that none of the other airburst incidents ever produced anything significantly close in terms of power to what the Tunguska incident did. So I saw that the strongest airburst ever recorded was the equivalent to approximately 2,000 megatons of TNT. The Tunguska incident produced somewhere around 20,000 megatons. So yeah, there's a big difference. And next we have the comet impact theory. So in this guesstimate, the thought is a large comet made up of gas and ice traveled into Earth's atmosphere. When this happened, it caused the comet to heat up and explode in the air instead of hitting the ground. So even this one here is similar to the meteoroid theory, only instead of a large rock made of iron, they said it was a large comet made of ice and gas and some rock. The main problem I see with this theory, though, is that the ice and gas would disperse very quickly when it got heated. So that would make the chances of it reaching a point low enough to the ground to cause a blast zone, like at Tunguska, highly unlikely. So moving on to the next theory, then we have the natural gas theory. Now, according to this hypothesis, the Tunguska event was caused by an explosion of natural gas released from the underground reservoirs due to geological activity. The released gas ignited in the atmosphere, causing the massive explosion. All right, so the first person to mention this would be astrophysicist Wolfgang Kunt, and he has proposed that the Tunguska event was caused by the release of a subsequent explosion of 10 million tons of natural gas from within the Earth's crust. All right, so the basic idea is that natural gas leaked out of the crust and then rose to its equal density height in the atmosphere. From there, it drifted downwind in like a sort of a candle wick, which eventually found an ignition source such as a lightning. Once the gas was ignited, the fire streaked along the wick and then down to the source of the leak in the ground, whereupon there was a huge explosion. This one here sounds feasible to me. I mean, I guess more so than the previous, But if it reached a point to the ground where the natural gas had been leaking, I mean, you would have to think there would be some kind of crater, right? Where it exploded in the gas pocket. I mean, it would have to tear up the ground, do something, Or, why would it cease to leak? I mean, people should be able to get a reading for natural gas in that area. I don't know why they couldn't find that. But also, if you look at the testimony from the Siberia newspaper, the weather was dry and clear that day without a cloud in the sky. So where would the lightning come from? That's another point. But anyways, these are the main scientific theories that are thought to possibly be a reason behind the Tunguska incident. However, due to the lack of physical evidence, the exact cause remains unknown to this day. So now let's hear some of the other theories behind what could have been the cause of this case. Now, look, don't get mad at us right here, but some would say it's irresponsible to even talk about these claims, but we're going to do it anyways just for humor, all right? If you don't like the outside of the box theories, you can stop the episode now, because that's what we're talking about from here until the finish. And let me just say that we appreciate you listening, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation. And we hope to see you join us again for the next episode. So, the first theory we're going to talk about is the possibility of a small black hole. So it's theorized that a small black hole with a mass of a few thousand tons made its way through Earth's atmosphere and collided with the ground in the Tunguska region. The black hole would have then absorbed all the matter in its path, instantly causing an explosion like the event that caused the damage found at the site. So you got to ask, is something like this even possible? Well, according to an article on PBS, the black hole would act like a bullet traveling towards our planet, and on impact, it would generate a shockwave through Earth's mantle like a supersonic Mach cone. These seismic waves would reach all points of the Earth's surface, and even the lowest mass possible for a primordial black hole, it would still produce the equivalent of a magnitude 4 earthquake. So, because of this, I can kind of see how people could come to this conclusion. I mean, it most certainly has the power to cause the damage. Without a doubt, it would shake the Earth. It also would not leave behind any physical evidence, although there likely would be a crater. However, it's important to note that there has never been any recorded data on a black hole colliding with Earth. And because of that, this theory cannot be supported by any scientific evidence. It's also considered implausible because if it's thought that even if a penny-sized black hole ever hit Earth, it would be a planet killer. The Earth would implode on itself, basically start to turn inside out, and whatever didn't explode would fly out into space and collide with whatever was in the area, because our gravitational force would be non-existent. The problems would not end with our planet either. It's highly likely that our whole solar system will be in trouble because of this. So we don't want a black hole. The next theory we have is the antimatter meteor theory. So it's suggested by some that a meteor made up from a combination of matter and antimatter collided with Earth's atmosphere, and this caused the airburst explosion that damaged the region. However, because of how rare antimatter is and the fact that there was no gamma ray burst detected, the theory is highly unlikely. I think people just went with that one because it's energy and it wouldn't leave behind any evidence. So, it fulfills the details in that way, but it's not very likely for the other ones. And so finally, what you all been waiting for, we have the UFO theory. And I've heard a bunch of different scenarios on this one, but I'll just include the most prominent. The first is that a spacecraft or extraterrestrial origin either landed in the area, it malfunctioned over the region. This then caused the explosion of energy, which created the crazy blast pattern that resembles a butterfly. Eventually, they were able to correct the malfunction and take off. Unfortunately, though, the damage had been done. So it was a big whoops moment. I heard many say that it was like an alien trying to teach their kid how to drive. The other theory I seen was a huge asteroid was on path to make a more direct impact with Earth. Meaning in this scenario, it wasn't going to be a bank shot, It was going to smash right into us, which would have been much, much worse for those calling Old Blue home. Chances are it would have ended us if it made direct impact. However, an alien race that watches over us took notice of this impending doom, and with their planetary defense weapon, they took aim at the asteroid and destroyed it right as it was entering Earth's atmosphere. Now, this disintegrated the main portion and knocked the rest off track, causing the small debris to burn up before hitting Earth. However, there would still be an energy blast that impacted the Tunguska region, flattening 800 or so square miles of forestry and leaving behind the symbol of the butterfly, which means peace and continued growth on their home planet. So in this scenario, they saved our asses and then slapped a tramp stamp on our asses at the same time. Again, there are no scientific means to corroborate any of this story, but there are many theories and claims that make a case for it, especially the part where there are ancient aliens watching over us. So reading through the comment section on one of these alien ET claims, I saw one person talking about how a Russian scientist was trying to make a connection between the aliens saving our life and what happened to their Phobos probe, which was supposed to explore the moons of Mars, which is, from what I understand, if there was going to be life anywhere, it would likely be there. Apparently, just as the probe was about to complete its final mission, which was to explore this moon called Phobos, a glitch on the onboard computer triggered an end mission command, dropping the probe offline forever. So, was it human error, or was it something else not wanting the mission to continue any further? Well, most would say human error. But what this scientist was trying to say is, look, there's somebody over there, and they were the ones watching us and helped us out. So, if you found that interesting, you may want to spend some time checking that one out for yourself. I did. All right. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of the Tunguska Incident, and now we can let you in on what we personally think this phenomenon to be. So, on this one here, based off the evidence, which there's just not much, I'd say it was either the airburst theory or the natural gas explosion idea. I mean, those are the most logical, I guess, when it comes to this mystery. If there was someone up there watching out for us and stopped this monster from destroying everyone, if you're listening to this episode, send me an email at info@spacecityxfiles.com. I want to send you a free gift card and some free show swag because you're a hero and you have my gratitude. Anyways, that's our take on this one. If you'd like to share your ideas or any facts that I may have missed that are interesting, feel free to reach out to us via email or social media. And as always, the conversation's going to continue on Reddit, so if you want to chat, hit us up there. I'll leave you a link in the show notes. That's going to do it for this one, though, friends. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope to see you on the next one, which will be our final for the season. All right. Thank you for supporting and listening. This is Rick with the Space City X-Files. Take care. Until we meet again, keep exploring.